Hi, my name is Rickard. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate the recent Us poster that came out for Jordan Peele's new film. The trailer for it looks amazing. Get Out was one of my favorite films of last year. So when I saw this poster come out, I thought, you know what? I got to do a tutorial on this. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is go to File, Open. And I'm going to open Us Poster Tutorial 78. And this is a photo I took for this tutorial. It's a few things that after doing the composite, I wish I had changed. Like, I probably wouldn't have had her holding a mask. I would have just had her hold a piece of paper because that would be easier to cut out. But we're going to work with what we have. Alright, so this is already, the settings are already what I want. So let's go ahead and open image. Okay, good. So in this file, I want to straighten out her head. And I also want to cut out her hand, well, because I'm going to put her other face behind here, and also because I want some kind of control over the rotation of it. So first, let's go ahead and cut out the arm. So to switch between view modes, you can hit F on your keyboard. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And zoom in here, holding Command and Control. I'm going to go on the pen tool. For things that are not like, none of the automatic tools are going to work very well because we've got light, dark, dark here, we've got the shirt blended into the background here. So we're going to have to do the selection manually, and the best tool for that, in my opinion, is the pen tool. Alright, so let's go ahead and start here. What I'm going to do is click, and then click to create the next anchor point, and then by clicking and dragging I can create curves. So let's go ahead, and I'll probably fast forward through this so you don't have to watch me do the entire thing. Although I will mention one thing, which is after you've dragged this, what you can do is hold down Option, and that'll allow you to independently adjust your handle so that the one, like, because right now one end controls the curve on both. So by holding down Option and clicking on this, you can stop that behavior. Also, when you click on Command, you can move an anchor point after. So these are all things that make the pen tool great for creating selections. So I can hold down Command again, make this end of it smaller. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the arm here. And I'm going to stop it right around here because we're going to be cropping this image. We're not going to see the bottom part of this. And even if we do decide to, this is a good point because if we want to twist her arm, it's a natural point where it already separates itself from the rest of the shirt with that fold there. Alright, there you go. Our path is done here. I'm going to go ahead and go into paths. Now the work path is kind of your working path, so you always want to save it in case you need to use that selection again. So we're going to call this hand. Alright, next I'm going to right mouse click and say make selection. And by adding a tiny bit of feather radius, you're essentially anti-aliasing. For something that's this size, because this is a really large image, I like to add just like 0.2 to 0.5 to make the selection not so sharp. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is Command J, which is going to make a copy of my selection onto its own layer. So now we can call this hand. Also, whenever I start a project, I always like to just copy the background so I always have the original as my background so I can refer back and forth to it. All right, next what I want to do is straighten her head. And really, I'm trying to decide whether I should straighten it from the neck or just from the head. And I think we can get away with just doing the head. So let's go ahead and cut out her head. Now, you can see there's a tiny bit of hair there and a tiny bit there. And in the final image, we're going to kind of fade the whole background to black. So rather than doing a long cutout, I'm just going to cut out here and then leave the rest not cut out. So let's go ahead and again, we're going to start with our paths. See, just like that. I just need to separate from there to there, really. And then out here, we can go pretty wide. I want to make sure all that hair is in there. And let's go down to about here. And here we have to be accurate again. I'm also going to take this little teardrop here. Okay, so now I hit A to switch to my arrow tool so I can adjust this here. Just that. And there you go. Looks pretty good. All right, and then again, I'm going to right mouse click, make selection, hit OK. Also, we can go to paths and call this head. And I don't want that selected anymore. Okay, so now from here, I'm going to do Command J again. We'll call this head. And then what I'm going to do is add some guides. So I'm going to hit Command R to show my ruler. So I can put a guide here, and that's about right. And then I'm going to do Edit, Free Transform. And if you're new to Photoshop, the way you do rotation and scale is with the Free Transform tool. There is no Rotate tool and there is no Scale tool. So that's pretty good. Now you can see the middle of the nose and the middle of the lip should be aligned. So we're going to just move this over a little bit here. That looks pretty straight. Maybe just a touch more. Yeah, there you go. So that's nice and straight. So let's hit the check mark, or we can just double click. So there you go. Now we do have this double thing and this going on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, go on the stamp tool, and just brush that away. I'll put the opacity on 100. And now I can take it down to hit 100. That looks pretty good. Also a little smaller. Now to dynamically adjust the brush, hold down Control and Option and then drag left and right. And then if you drag up and down, it adjusts the feather or the hardness of the brush. That's pretty good. All right, so now we've straightened our head. And I'm also going to get rid of this. We actually had, when I took the photo, you can barely see it, but there's a line of tears going down here, which we're going to enhance so that it's more obvious. But I don't want this on her shirt, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to use the patch tool. And with the patch tool, you can just make a circle around and then drag this somewhere. And I want it on normal. And I'll show you why, because if I put it on content aware, what it's going to try to do is you can still see the patch there. Because with the content aware, it looks for what's around it and then tries to determine what's in there. For some things, it's great. For other things like this, it's not so great. Normal, which is the original the original patch tool, what it does is it takes the light and dark information from where you are, but the textural information from somewhere else. So you can see it got a little bit darker there. Just makes it look a little more realistic in terms of the change there. All right, then a few things I want to do with the hand. I want to get rid of that, and I want to get rid of that. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to do that with the patch tool as well. So I'm just going to make a selection around this. Make sure I'm on the hand layer. And then drag that. Yeah, good. And I also want to get rid of this. Again, I'm going to use the patch tool. And the reason I'm doing one letter instead of the whole thing is I don't have think with where you're going to source the other information from, right? So I didn't have enough to do the whole thing, but now I do have enough black space there. Okay, so that's the one problem with normal. So let's see how content aware does here. You see content aware did better there because it's not bleeding this background color into it. So it looks pretty good. All right, and then I know I'm gonna want to make some adjustments to the glove. So I'm gonna make a selection of the glove as well. Now because my whole hand is selected, I really just need to cut away the skin. So by holding down Command and clicking on your layer, it selects the transparency of the layer. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, I could go here with the lasso, hold down Option to minus, but that's a bit risky because if you mess it up, you can't really go back and forth. So what I do is I hit Q. That puts me in quick mask mode. And basically what that's doing is it's taking your selection and turning it into a channel that you can then paint using black and white or other tools. And then when you hit quick again or Q again, it takes the quick mask and turns it back into just Photoshop selection. So let's go around here. What I'm going to do is select out the skin. So now I can do right mouse click, make selection. Now it's selected the glove. I actually want to select the outside of the glove, so I can go select inverse, which is Shift Command I. So let's use the shortcut Shift Command I. And then because my background color is black, I can hit Command Delete. And what that's going to do is it's going to fill that area with black. So now when I hit Q again, I have just the glove selected. And what we'll do is add a curves layer. And because I added it with my selection, it's automatically making a mask. And then I'm clipping it by holding Option and putting my mouse right between the two layers. It's clipping that correction to this layer, meaning any correction I make will only apply to this layer. And here in my properties, I can now make that glove a little lighter. Now you see that that's a bit problematic, and I'm going to show you how we can resolve that. let's go to blue. I kind of want to make it a brownish color. So we're going to take down blue. The opposite of blue is yellow. And let's add a little bit of red. There you go, that looks pretty good. All right, so now, let's put this back in here. We're getting this line here, which does not look great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold down Command, click on my mask there, and I'm gonna go all the way to my original layer here. And then with one of my selection tools selected, click on Select and Mask. And then I can turn on Smart Radius and drag that to 3 or 4 pixels. And what you'll see is it's actually using the pixel information to pull that selection toward the pixel information in the file. So now I can hit OK. And then turn these back on. I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer mask and add a new one. All right, so you can see now, it's still a little bit, but it's far better than it was before, that hard edge there. And for our purposes and how much we're going to scale this works just fine. I'm going to go ahead and save, just in case. And we'll call this US Poster Composite. All right, good. Next, I'm going to do File Open, and we're going to open US Poster Tutorial 107. And that already looks quite good there. I don't think I really need to make any adjustments. So let's go ahead and hit Open Image. All right, so this is going to be our face, our mask. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out the face. A little Hannibal Lecter style here. Oops. So let's go ahead and copy the layer. I'm going to hold down Command and Spacebar to zoom in. And go on the pen tool, P, and we'll make our selection. I'm going to do it right about where the hairline is. And then down, kind of following her jawline. And you want to be fairly accurate here. Also realize I'm doing all this at about 3x the size that we're actually going to use it, so I'm probably going a little overboard on accuracy, but always better to be more accurate than less, in my opinion. All right, let's go A to fix this. I'm gonna drag this until we have matching there. About there. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so let's go make selection. And Command J. Okay, good. So now the next thing I want to do is cut out her eyes. And we want to cut out her eyes and the bottom and the top of her lid up to about, well, up to where that line is there. So some of this is kind of just guesswork, meaning where that line would be. Let's do it to there. And I do, because the eye naturally has that kind of a shape there, I kind of want to replicate that here. So you see how I'm going a little further out there. That's because the eye naturally does that, so this will look more natural. That looks pretty good. Let's do this eye. Good. All right. Again, I'm going to go to paths, and you'll notice our face path isn't there anymore. That's because I didn't save it. So your work path is kind of a temporary path, and it's whatever you do. And each time you start a new path, it overwrites it. So that's why it's always a good idea to go in and save your paths. By giving your path a name, you've saved it, it's dropped on the list, and when you start a new path, it does it on work path, not on the one that you've named. So we'll call this I. Whoops, we'll call this eyes. Okay, and then another way you can make a selection out of a path, by the way, is by holding down Command and clicking here, or going down here. The reason I like doing it with the right mouse click method is because with the right mouse click, I have the feather radius, anti-aliasing, and so forth. All right, so there you go, and we're going to add a mask. Now, I want the mask to not include the parts that I'm selecting versus the selection defining the mask. So what I'm going to do is hold down Option and then create the mask. So there you go. Good, so that's looking nice and creepy. Now, we don't want those eyelashes there. So what I'm going to do, and I tend to just make copies of my layers as I'm working, and then once you're happy with everything, you can always delete them. And the reason for that is it makes your whole production flow less destructive, meaning if you ever need to go back to an earlier step, you don't have to go back in your history in case you worked on some other layer. You can just go back to an earlier layer, work from there. So that's, you'll see I have 3 layers, but really I haven't done much except selections. And the reason for that is I can always go backwards. So in this case, I'm going to do Command J so that I have this. And now what I'm going to do is make sure I'm on the layer, not the mask. And then go on the healing brush tool, not spot healing, healing. Healing brush is kind of a combination of the spot healing brush and the clone stamp. So it works the same way as the patch tool, except for you're doing it with a brush. All right, so let's go ahead and make our brush a bit smaller. Generally, when you're using healing tools, you don't want feathered. Meaning you don't want your brush feathered. Good enough. And let's do the same here. We could actually try the patch tool here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection. And so what I did there, I have this selection, but I want to get rid of this selection. Now if I do plus, it's not going to do anything because this mask, if I hold Option down, is just these black things, right? So there's a few ways I could do that, but the easiest way is make a selection of this first and then hold down Shift, Option, Command, and then you'll see the little X there. And now I have the selection plus the mask selection. Now what I'm going to do is go on my lasso, again hold down Shift and Option to do intersect. And then just paint this area here that I want, about to there. And then go on my patch tool. And then let's drag. Why is it not working? Oh, because I'm on the mask. All right, there you go. And just want an area of clean skin. Okay, so let's try that with a normal. Let's see if that actually works better. It does. Okay, so you can see the normal there. It retained more of the original background information than color. So that's going to be good enough for our purposes. And let's do this little spot too. Back on our patch tool. Good. All right, so that's quite good. Let's get rid of this thing. Again, this is easiest with the patch tool. Voila. Still see it a bit. There you go. And okay, now I want to give it a little bit of depth so that it looks like it has a little bit of thickness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this layer mask and then Command J to make another copy. And then I'm going to just push that in a bit and put it behind. So you can see here we're adding just a little bit of thickness. And then Command M for curve. I'm going to make the back one a little bit darker. Let's see here. And where's my... Oh, there you go. Okay, so you can see it getting darker there. And we can see how that looks here too. Yeah, it's not very noticeable, but it will help to give that perception of a bit of depth. That's good. But I don't want it around the other edges, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Command to select the transparency of that without the eyes, and then add a mask on this bottom one like that. And we can apply that. Good. So that looks quite nice. I've got now her face mask. What we'll do is we'll select these two and then right mouse click and do Convert to Smart Object. And then I just hit F a few times to get into the right mode so I can see both images side by side. I'm going to drag this in here. And we'll call this face mask. Good. So now let's go ahead and turn off the guides. To do that, I'm going to do Command semicolon. And what I want to do is size this up so that it matches the size of this face. So just do that about there. And positioning wise, I'd like to see that eye, but I don't think that's quite as important as seeing more of her face. So probably go about there is where we want it. And now we can move this down here, take these layers and Command T, and I want to take this down to here and then down to there, and then drag that to where she would be holding it. There. And let's move the mask up just a bit so we see a little more of her lips there. I think that's pretty good. And we can probably... So by moving the anchor point, when you rotate the layer, you're controlling a little bit more. So I wouldn't mind seeing just a little bit more inside there. So maybe there. I'd like to see just a hint of that eye. And what I may do is go in the warp tool, just move this. So I'm seeing enough of her nose, but also a little bit more of that eye. There you go. That's quite nice. All right. And I think I'm gonna just make this a little bit less. Okay, so now I just added a mask by clicking there, and with my black brush, I'm going to make it kind of hard and just paint out this area here so we have a little bit more of that eye showing. Kind of would like to see that highlight, which We might just exaggerate a bit. All right, that's pretty good. All right, so now we have a little issue here because this part of the shirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to this one here and steal some of her shirt. So let's go ahead, zoom in here, and let's go on the quick selection tool and click on select subject. So that's actually going to do, whoops, wrong layer, because that's actually going to do a pretty good job against a black background like this. There you go. And let's go to select and mask. Kind of broken there, so let's go here. Actually, what I could do is, before doing my select and mask, I'm going to make a copy of the layer, go to curves, and just push up the brightness so that there's more contrast between her shirt and the background there. And let's hit OK, and then let's do select subject. Much better job there. And select and mask. And I'm really only worried about this edge, not this one here, because I'm not going to use that. All right, now we can go smart. Smart radius, turn that up. 3 pixels looks pretty good. Okay. And then turn off my brighten layer and then do Command J on this layer here. So now I have that cut out. Now I just want to cut out the rest here, and I'll do that with the pen tool. So click on P for the pen tool. Go down here. And I'm trying to go, when I select down here, kind of where there's a natural separation of the shirt already. Good. Let's zoom out there. And right mouse click, make selection. Okay, Command J. All right, so now we'll call this side of shirt. Drag that over here and drag that in. It's a little bit different color, but we can fix that. And also the size is a bit different. Okay, so now one of the least used blending modes, we're going to use difference. And with difference, what I can do is put them on top of each other, make one point match, so right here, and then see when the rest of it matches. So in this case, you can kind of see, and if it's black, it means everything's lined up. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for everything to become black, and you can see some of the elements here that are starting to line up, so that looks pretty good. Let's put that back on normal. Not bad. That's going to work for our purposes. Fortunately, the hand is covering up the seam there, but we are getting a difference in color here. It's probably not a big deal because I'm actually going to change the color of the shirt to red, but I will show you how to adjust something like that. So we'll do Command M for curves. This is obviously more cyan than that, so what we want to do is go to red, which is cyan. The opposite of red is cyan, and we want to bring that up just a little bit to get rid of some of that cyan. And right about there. And simple as that. So if you know your color wheel, doing color correction is a no-brainer. Okay, now I want to get rid of this big ass mask here. So what I'm going to do is go on this layer and add a layer above it, go on a brush, make it a nice big soft brush, select this background color. Now I'm going to go on my eyedropper because this is kind of a noisy background. I want it to select a larger area. So if I go on the eyedrop tool, which is I on the keyboard, and there it is. you can select your sample size. So what that does is rather than selecting 1 pixel, it'll select an area of 3 pixels and average it out. You can actually make this 5 by 5 for an image this large. That's probably going to work better for us. There you go. And let's go back on our brush and just paint this out there. Make the brush smaller. Pick this like dark shadow area here. And that's on this layer, so we'll need to put a layer above that like this. That, and then probably go to black. So by hitting D on your keyboard, you set the defaults to black and white. There you go. All right, that looks pretty nice. We are getting a bit of a color difference between her face here, which I'm going to want to fix. Let's see. And I want to do some dodging and burning, and we want to add the tear. So let's do the tear first. Okay, so for the tear, what we want to do first, I mean, if I zoom in here close, you can see it, and I did have a tear when I took the photo, but it's really not showing. And I think that's an important part of the image. So let's go ahead and make a path that tries to kind of simulate where that teardrop is going here. Let's go down. I'm going to pause for a second here. Okay, so I'm going to go down to all the way to there, although I'm probably not going to use all that. Try to give it slightly organic shape. You don't want to be too straight with this. Right to there. Good. And let's call that tear. And what I want to do is make selection. This one I actually don't want any radius. I want it to be a little sharper. Okay, and I'm going to add a curves layer. What I want to do here is take down the curve just a little bit. There you go. Now we're starting to see the tear kind of where it gets wet. It gets a little bit darker, but we're not getting any glisten. So this is where it gets a little more fancy in terms of what we're going to do. So I'm going to take that selection, go on this layer here, go in here. I've made a new layer, and we'll call this tear. And I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Black and White. And I'm going to play with these and see where I get the most contrast. I think we're mostly going to be dealing with the yellow and the red. So out there. And then I'm going to go on to Image Adjustments Levels. And what I want to do is I want to pull the bottom and then pull the darks. I want to get those highlights there. So about there looks pretty good. Now if I hit OK and put this on screen, you see it looks like it's glistening. Now even that to me is a little, it's too much. It should just be a few. So let's Command Z twice. Let's try it with a curve. See if I can get a better result out of that. Yeah, I'm still not getting really the look that I want. Okay, I'm going to delete this. And you see I've got more highlights there. What I might do is go on my selection tool and just move the selection to here. I might just cheat this. And Command J from there. Move that in place. And you'll see because the layers are the same size, it'll snap into place for you. Okay, and then with that, let's go ahead and Shift Option Command B brings up black and white. So let's go ahead and do that again. And then Command M. Yeah, I think that's better. Let's put that on screen. So that's definitely better. I still think we need a few more highlights. So let's try this. I'm going to go in here and go on Bevel and Emboss. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn the shadow completely off. So we're just getting the highlight. And then we're going to take the screen and put it on 100%. And we're going to put this on, yeah, inner bevel's fine. Let's try chisel soft. No. So smooth definitely works best. Take the size down. And try that. And then I'm going to take right mouse click on effects and say create layers. And what that's going to do is it's going to take that highlight and make it its own layer like that. And we can cut it that away. And then under the blending mode here, what I'm going to do is go in here and under underlying layer, I'm going to pull this. So now it's only going to highlight where there's already some highlight in the face. And then by holding Option, and I can separate these out a bit. There you go. All right, a few little tricks there. Now, I'll also add a mask there. It's a little too much right there, so let's go to our brushes. I'm gonna pick, let's reset the brushes so it'll look like what you have. Let's go to special effects brushes and maybe select this one. I want to make sure I'm on brush for a start. Actually, let's use general dry media brushes. And let's use this. And make sure I'm on the mask. Yeah, there you go. So I just want to break it up a little bit. Like that. Good. That looks pretty nice. So let's take all the layers that make the tier, put them in tier, and then I'm going to go to my brush again, add a mask to the tier, go right mouse, and then just pick my general soft brush here. Pick this one, make it a bit bigger, and then just make it not as strong right there. There you go. Okay, quite happy with that. The other thing I want to do is make the highlights in her eyes a bit bigger. So let's go ahead and option click on the head. And let's go in here, select our lasso, select just around the eye highlight, Command T, make that bigger. Do the same with this one. Just going to move this one just a little bit more because I want to see it peeking out there. That looks pretty nice. All right, next I want to make a shadow from the mask. So let's go ahead and Command click on that layer. Add a new layer and call this Mask Shadow. And then I'm going to go on to a selection tool so I can move the selection. And then fill that with black with Option Delete. My foreground color is black. Like so. And let's blur that. And let's do transform. Just kind of put that where we want it there. About there. And let's adjust the opacity to about there. And then I'm going to add a mask to it and just kind of get rid of where, actually what I'll do, so I'm just going to make it contour to her face just a little bit, like that, that. Good, that looks pretty good. And let's do the same for the hand. I'm going to add a layer called Hand Shadow. Fill that with black. And use the same Gaussian blur there. And what we'll do here is transform. Kind of turn it like this. About there. And then I'm going to go on to the warp here. And just because this part is closer, right? So the closer something is, the less far away the shadow is going to be. So there, and let's adjust the opacity on that. And let's add a mask. Get rid of it there. We don't have a double shadow. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to do another one. This one I'm going to select both like this. And we'll add another layer and call this Big Shadow. Fill that. And on this one I'm just going to go to Gaussian blur and make quite a big Gaussian blur. This is just going to kind of generally make it darker where that's coming out, and we can adjust the opacity. And that looks pretty good. Okay, next we're getting a little flare on the edge there of the hand, so I'm going to fix that real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Command, select that, and then go to one of my selection tools, select and mask, and then shift that edge inward. and turn on Smart Radius. So there you go. So now we're just selecting that in and feather that a bit. Good. And then I'm going to add a mask on there. So that's just going to cut that away a bit like that. Good, that looks pretty nice. All right, next I want to take her face and just match the color a bit better to this. Right now it's too red. So let's do a curve on that. So I'm going to go to red, take that down just a little bit. And add a little bit of yellow. There you go, those two match better now. You can see before and after there. All right. Next, we're going to change the color of our shirt. I'm also going to get rid of this while I'm on the layer. Let's go to the patch tool, select that. All right, so for the shirt, I already have this half selected, or already have a selection of that half. And so let's go ahead and select that. And well, I guess really what we need to do is select this part of the shirt. And I'm going to do similar to what I did with the other shirt. I'm going to take this background, make a new copy of it, call it brighter, just curve that up a bit so that we have more separation here, and then click on my quick selection tool, just W, select subject, and then select the mask, and turn on Smart Radius. Increase that quite a bit. Let's see how nicely we can get that. Okay, that's pretty good. And I'm gonna hit Q for quick mask and then just paint with a white brush these parts that are a little not selected nicely there. It is a little blurry because the focus was on her face. So yeah, that should work pretty nicely. And then what we can do is hold down Command, click on this, add that to the selection, just holding Option. And it's pretty good. Let's hit Q. All right, next I want to get rid of the selection of her neck. Okay, so let's hit Q again, go on our pen tool. So we want just the shirt, not her skin. We'll go in here. So I'm going to take all this, make a selection there, and this, because it's kind of blurry there, I'm actually going to add a 3 pixel radius. Fill that with black. And we want to do the same for this part of the hand. So let's go ahead and select our hand. And then using the lasso, I'm going to minus from this selection. Now, one trick with the lasso tool is if you hold down Option, it turns it into the polygonal selection tool. Just kind of my preferred way of using it. And now if I let go, if I just hold down the mouse, it just goes onto my normal. So there you go, and let's add that. Get rid of that from our selection. So there you go. Now we have just the shirt. Let's hit Q, and we're gonna go above everything. You can also get rid of this brighter layer there. Then let's add a hue saturation layer there. Push that toward a reddish color. So there. We'll add a little saturation. And then the rest I'm going to do with curves rather than hue. I don't like what's happening there. And actually, if I use curves instead, it may solve some of that. So rather than using a hue saturation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to curves and use that instead. So to get red, we want to add magenta, add yellow. So let's go to green, which is the opposite of magenta, pull that down, and then let's go to blue, opposite, pull that down, and let's add some red. And let's do a little bit more magenta, that there, and more yellow. So that's pretty nice red color there. Yeah, I'm liking that. Maybe make the whole thing a little darker too. There. Good. Put this back there. All right, next we want to do some burning, dodge and burn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Layer, New, and here, if I change my mode to either Overlay or Soft Light, I get this option, Fill with Soft Light Neutral. So I'm going to turn that on. And what that's going to do is just give me a gray layer. And I'm going to call this Burn and Dodge. And then what we can do, I'm actually not going to use the Burn and Dodge tool. This is essentially burning and dodging. What I'm going to do is just use a normal brush with black and white, but I'm going to take the opacity down quite a bit to like 20. And what I'm going to do now, so with white, I can make areas a little bit lighter, give it a little more definition here. And then with this hair on the edge here. And then with black, I can make some areas have a little more shadow. And go ahead and select this and kind of darken these edges a bit. That looks pretty good. Deselect that so I can do this area too. Add a little more shadow there. Just going around the whole image. And that looks pretty nice. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, so the last thing we want to do now is black out the background. I kind of feel like this face is a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the face mask layer, the shadow layer. I'm holding down commands to select both layers at the same time. And I think those are the only two layers we need, really. So let's go ahead and transform. Put it here and just make it a tiny bit smaller. Oh, and what's happening here? Oh, you see, that's the problem. I should have done my dodge and burn. After, meaning I should have done the dodge and burn after resizing. So how do we get around that? Well, we can move the dodge and burn to underneath that layer and then adjust it. Let's see if it solves the problem. No. Really? Okay. Well, we're going to have to do the dodge and burn again. Alright, so let's take these two. Just those two layers. Let's move our anchor point to there. I think that probably a bit better in terms of size. Kind of also want to make it a little more turned. That. Good. And we're getting a bit of that there, so let's paint that out as well. And our big shadow is a bit too big there, so I'm going to put a mask. And brush that. There you go, that looks better. Alright, so let's do our burn and dodge tool again. We'll do this quickly because I already explained how to do it. Burn and dodge. Good, that looks pretty nice. Alright, so next we're going to black out the background. So to do that, I'm simply going to select everything. And we'll use all the selections we have already. Now her face isn't all nicely cut out, so I'll have to just quickly add that to our selection here. Let's go ahead and use the pen tool for that. Doesn't have to be super accurate because I'm gonna just kind of use a large brush to make the whole background a little go to black. And we're going to make a selection there. Let's do that back to point 2. And then option, delete, to add that to our selection. There you go. All right, so now what we can do is just add a new layer here called black background. And let's make our foreground color black. And with a large brush. Whoops. So we're going to want to invert our selection there. Invert that in. Pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is take my selection and feather it quite a bit. So let's say 80. And then with a small brush, just go in and paint these edges a bit so we're getting kind of darkness coming into the edges here. Good, that looks pretty nice. We are getting a little cut off there, so I'm just going to go in here and just paint over those edges. All right, now the last thing we're going to do is add a lot of textural contrast to the whole image. So what I'm going to do is add a layer at the very top. And this is a way of sharpening your images too. We'll call this sharpen. And I'm going to hold down Shift, Option, Command E. And what that's going to do is it's going to take all our layers and copy them into a single layer. And what we can do is go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And we can zoom in here, and by adjusting your pixels, you can see how much your sharpness is going to affect it. And we can actually do more than one of these layers, but let's go ahead and do it around 4 pixels. Now if I put this on overlay, you can see how much texture it's adding there. And the original actually has quite a bit, so I'm going to double this up a couple times. So we're getting a lot of texture. And we can take these second copies, put them in a group, add a mask to that, and just paint out where we don't want the texture to be quite that strong. So around here, I would say, I like it around the eye, maybe a little bit less there, a little bit less there. That looks pretty nice. Okay, and then finally what I want to do is an overall curve. What we're going to do with this is we're going to bring up the black just a bit so it's not pure black. And also bring up the bottom of the blue so we get kind of this faded washed blue background, and take the top of it down so we get a little bit of yellow in our whites. There you go. You can see the difference that makes. And then I'm going to go File, Open, and what I want to do is add some grunge. So I'm going to open this layer here, Command A, Command Copy, and then Command V. Bigger. Ugh. So right about there. And what we're going to do is put this on soft light. Obviously it's adding way too much right now. We can also make the layer black and white using Shift, Option, Command B. And then take this opacity down to just almost nothing. So I'd say about 10%. Just adding a little bit of texture there. And one other one. This darker grunge. I'll take that. Command A, copy, Command V. And let's put that on soft light. Make it bigger. And let's take the opacity on that down quite a lot. So it's not doing a lot, but it does help. And I don't want it here because it's kind of making her shirt look dirty. So we'll just put a mask on it and cover it up there. All right, that looks pretty damn nice. And the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to take all this, smash it again, Shift, Option, Command E, so it's on its own layer. And then we're going to make a new document. And I'm going to make it 4x5 because that's the poster. There we go. That's the poster dimensions of the original Us poster that we're replicating here. And this taking a little bit. So let's go to Photo. And we want 5. We'll do 8 by, let's see. No, 4x5 is 810, right? So that's good. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, Place, and the original poster, which we'll use as a reference here. That's the original poster. So we'll place that in here. I believe I already have, right. Okay, so let's, okay, so we have the original poster here. And now what we're going to do is in here, we're going to take the one that we've created, drag it in there, and put this on. Actually, we can just change the opacity to 50%. Put it where we want it. Let's match up her eyeball. And then make the whole thing smaller. It's about the same size, same ratio. About there is good. Put it back on normal. Now I am seeing a difference there, the sky color and also the kind of the intensity of the colors. So what we can do is we'll just do an overall curve on the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut it in half. Actually, let's do it with a lasso. I'm going to cut it in half diagonally so I can kind of see both images at the same time. And I'll do that with a mask. And by unlinking the mask, we can kind of move it around. So like, let's say we want it about there so I can see quite a bit of both images. I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer, link it to this so it's only affecting this, and then I can make my adjustments here. I want to pump up the intensity of color there like that, an S curve. Oh, I noticed one other thing that I want to do. You'll notice in the original poster, she doesn't really have this eyebrow, and I do think that helps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our composite, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of her eyebrow here. So let's turn that off. Because we have these sharpen layers, that eyebrow information is actually now sitting on top. So what I can do is I can turn those off. I'll take all these layers that are kind of our post effects, turn those off, and go to, I can actually do this on its own layers so I can adjust the intensity. Go onto my patch tool, and what I want to do is select our entire eyebrow here. And now, yeah, that tool does not work. Okay, so, but I can use this, which, as I mentioned earlier, this is actually very similar to the patch tool. It's just you're using the clone method instead of taking a whole area, you're doing it with a brush. So, but the nice thing about this is I can sample all layers instead of just the current layer. So what I can do now is go in here, and I want to take the hardness down, so about there, and then what I can do is paint over this. Okay, so voila, she no longer has that eyebrow. But now when I turn this layer back on, you can see that eyebrow information is still in the sharpness mask. So it just looks like she has a very light eyebrow there, which is what I want. All right, so now let's go ahead and do this again. We're going to copy that, pull this in, down here, copy our mask to it, put our curves layer on there. Oh, before we do that, we should probably adjust the size of it again. So let's take the opacity down, line up our eye. Down. It's about center. I think that's pretty nice. And I'm going to hit 0 on the keyboard to make my opacity 100. And move her just a bit to about there, obviously there. And our S-curve is looking pretty nice. And let's go to our blue, and you can see the our blacks are not black, so we're going to pull that up a little, and then what I may also do is add a okay, so now we've gotten rid of too much yellow, so let's go back in that curve, go to our blue, and take the yellow down. Let's see, yeah, that looks better. All right, and then let's turn that off, and then I'm going to also add a levels and just bring up the bottom. So that our black is not pure black. Still even. So that's pretty close in terms of the amount of blackness there in the background. And let's take the original poster, take it out of our group, so now I can turn on and off the group. And what I'm going to do is now add the lettering. To do that, I don't know exactly which fonts were used here. I'm going to use something relatively similar. That's a free Google font called Playfair Display. So let's select Playfair. Display. And let's do bold. And I also want to know where my center is. So what I'm going to do is go to View, New Guide Layout, and I'm going to make my columns 2. That will just give me a center line there. And let's start there. Just click, and then I can start typing. I want to make my text white. And that's right, orange peel. Select that. I'm going to turn on my palette and turn it on to small caps. And then we can adjust our text size to match. I can also do it interactively by holding Shift, Command, and the left-right brackets, or whatever they're called. About there. There you go. And I'm going to hold down Shift and Option. Option will make a copy of your layer. And let's type here a new nightmare from the mind of me award winner. And Command A to select all of that. And then I'm going to interactively just make that smaller. That's about right. And then by holding Shift Command, Option Command, and the right arrow, I can adjust the space between my letters. Increments are a little big there, so let's just here. That looks about good. I also don't want this to be bold. I want that to be regular there. Let's hit OK. Put that there. And let's do Option, drag this down, and we'll say writer, director of grapefruit. And take grapefruit, we'll make that italic. And all this, we're going to make this 0 and make the point size bigger. There. Let's move that up. And let's do this. And do watch fruits. And that needs to be a little bit bigger. That looks good. And then coming soon. Let's make that bigger. Good. And then for the us, I'm going to use a font called Pignon, also a free Google font. And for this, I'm going to turn off small caps, and we're just going to write boo and set this to 0. And even with text, the transform does work, and when you scale up the with Command T, scale it up, and then commit, you'll actually see it interactively changes your point size, which is quite cool. All right, put that there. All right, now we can take all these layers, and we'll call this text, call this artwork. Put the text above the artwork there. And let's turn off our guides. And I think the artwork needs to move a little bit to the left there. There you go. And there you go. All right, there you have it. All the assets that I used for doing this tutorial you can find in the link below. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. It really does help. And you'll be alerted to new tutorials such as this one, as well as shorter ones on how different techniques, tools, and so forth, filters, work in Photoshop. Also, if you enjoy Photoshop compositing or want to get into the world of Photoshop compositing, I highly suggest you take one of my premium courses on nuclei.com. The courses take you through a composite similar to this, But the difference is in those, I take more time to explain what I'm doing, the tools I'm using, the shortcuts, and so forth. Also, I have a Photoshop starter kit, which has a whole bunch of assets that'll let you get into the world of Photoshop compositing, editing, and so forth. And it has camera raw files, clouds, backdrops, gradient presets, flares, all sorts of assets that you'll find yourself using over and over again when you do Photoshop compositing. So if you want to get that, that is free. You just need a free account to Nuclei. No credit card required. I've also included a link for that below. And that's pretty much it. I will see you next time. And please don't forget, subscribe to my channel. It helps a lot. And you get to know when I'm putting out another tutorial, which is at least once a week.